Hi guys, this is going to be your Chapter 1 Notes video. So today what we're going to be doing is talking about the fundamental principles of economics. So this is kind of like an introduction to the broad scope of this course. We're going to talk about the things that underpin the study of economics. And like we talked about in class, we said that as we try to come up with these models for the real world, we have to make certain assumptions. And one of the assumptions, one of the ideas we're going to build on is this idea of a rational consumer. All right, rational means you're making decisions based on reason, right? So you have a reason for doing things. So a rational consumer is going to be an individual who consumes, all right, and we're thinking about this word a little more broadly than we would, all right, so consumption here we're going to say is purchases. Goods and services. In a rational and therefore somewhat predictable way. And this idea of a rational consumer is going to underpin a lot of what we do in the next week or so. So our first principle of economics is going to be that choices are necessary because resources are scarce. So right there we throw a lot of vocabulary into the mix, right? We have to first establish what a resource is. So a resource, we're going to think of as an input. So it's something that can be used to make something else. So in our iPencil video today, the graphite would be a resource because it's something that can be used to produce the pencil. And then this idea of scarcity, well, what's that mean? Well, if things are scarce, that means we're talking about there not being enough of it. So that means there's a limited amount, and we would use more than we have available. All right. So there's a limited amount of the resource. If it's scarce, then we have to make our decisions wisely, right? If we only have 4 cups of flour and we're deciding how many cookies or loaves of bread to make, we need to kind of weigh our decision carefully because our resource is scarce. So let's think about an example for that. All right. So let's say we have a dozen eggs. For the week. All right. We only have a dozen for the whole week. So the eggs are relatively scarce then, and we have to make decisions about how to use our eggs strategically, right? We've got 7 days in a week, so we can't have 2 eggs for breakfast each day, and if we want to bake something, well, then we got to have fewer eggs for breakfast, right? So since our resource is scarce, we have to make choices. And this is where we're going to talk about opportunity costs and trade-offs. All right. And that kind of dovetails nicely into the next thing. Whoops, sorry about that. That dovetails nicely into the next thing we're going to talk about, because next up is the true cost of something is its opportunity cost. So we have to introduce this idea of what the opportunity cost is, right? So when does an opportunity cost arise? Well, it arises when you have to give one thing up to do another, right? So there's this trade-off, because if you spend your time in economics class, you can't spend it in pre-calculus class. There's a trade-off there. And the opportunity cost is going to be the cost of what you have given up in order to make a decision. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. So the opportunity cost is going to be the cost of the foregone or missed benefit from the next best choice. So the opportunity cost of binge watching Netflix, right? So the opportunity cost of that is the let's say we're talking about binge watching versus gardening. So is the beauty of my garden. Right? I have to sacrifice that to binge watch Netflix if my decision is between gardening and watching Netflix. This idea of an opportunity cost then brings us to this idea of marginal decision making. So the how much decision is the decision at the margin. So this is where we're going to talk about trade-offs. So to consume X more of good A, you must give up Y of good B, right? So if I've only got so much money, if I want to consume more of one thing, then I have to give up some of the other. So that's the idea of a trade-off. It's, well, I'm doing more of one thing, and that comes at the expense of another. So this is how we compare costs and benefits. Of marginal decisions. And I want you to think about marginal as like the margins of a paper. It's just a little bit. So marginal decision, so it's a little bit more or less. All right, so trade-off is kind of how we compare the cost and benefits of marginal decisions. So the trade-off between eating out and working out. Let's think about what that is. Well, so for each hour spent eating, I should say each additional hour, or additional hour spent eating, I forgo, or I give up, an hour of working out. Well, what's the opportunity cost of eating? Well, what's the foregone benefit? What is the benefit I'm giving up? Well, maybe that's inches on my waistline. All right, our fourth principle is going to say people respond to incentives and take all of their opportunities to make themselves better off. So an incentive is something, an opportunity or a change that is meant to affect your behavior. So it's a incentive, an inducement, or a nudge. Let's say a nudge. All right. If we're talking informally, it's a nudge to consume or make yourself better off. So maybe our Jordans, for those sneakerheads out there, well, they're 10% off. That's an incentive to buy the shoes, right? That sale incentivizes or encourages you to consume. And our fifth principle is going to say, well, hey, there are gains to be made from trade. So trade, right, is where we exchange goods. So let's just write that down first. All right. The gains or the benefits those benefits from trade result or come from, right? Trade, let's say, are a result of specialization. All right. So that could be like the U.S. produces helicopters because we have the expertise to do that, and we're relatively better at it, so we're going to specialize in helicopters, while the UK is going to specialize in / produce airplanes. Because you know what? They can do it for less than us. So there's gains to be made there if we specialize. markets move towards equilibrium. So that means when we're talking about supply and demand, right, and like the amount people are willing to buy of something and the amount people are willing to sell, all right, we're reaching this equilibrium, this kind of balance. So equilibrium means balance. All right, in the economic context, this means a situation where no individual or consumer, sorry, that's a terrible D, could be made better off by making a different choice. All right. So what's an example of something moving towards equilibrium? Well, let's think about when a good goes on sale. So as grocery stores reduce prices, let's say they make something cheaper, the supply of the good, so the amount that they have, balances out with the demand, the amount that's purchased. All right, our seventh principle says that we should use our resources as efficiently as possible, all right, to achieve society's goals. All right, so there's this idea of efficiency. And that happens when resources are used to create opportunities which make everyone better off. And with that, we've got this other idea, which is equity. Sometimes this is at odd with efficiency. All right. Equity is the idea that people get what they need. So this is kind of this idea of fairness. So something is equitable if we're giving everybody what they need. So we're meeting the needs of people. Our next principle is that our markets usually lead to efficiency, and that's because we are all selfish individuals, right? Everyone exploits the opportunities to get their best, like to satisfy their needs the most. So everyone exploits any gains they can from trade.